let me just answer this question before I tell you what it is. In the whole history of this channel, on only 2 occasions, just twice, did someone collaborate in a video with me by reading a book. Or even, let's lower the bar to entry a little bit, even reading a single page of a book. So one of those 2 collaborations, and I use the word collaboration as you're about to see tremendously generously here. One of those just concerned my interpretation of a single passage of Aristotle that you could define as a single page or less, and I appreciated that. There was one guy who took the time to disagree with me in detail. He read the passage, he cited, he told me why his interpretation was the way it was, and we looked at it together. We looked at the passage in Aristotle, we looked at the passage in Herodotus, these are ancient Greek sources. And you know what? I still think his interpretation is wrong. I think his interpretation is so wrong that even if I'm incorrect, he would still be incorrect. But nevertheless, there was material there for me to go on and make another video discussing Aristotle and the political implications of a few things that he had to say. It contributed to my intellectual life to have that person, in this sense, collaborating just by reading something I read and sharing their thoughts, sharing their perspective, sharing their interpretation. And the only other time that's happened in the whole history of this channel was with another YouTuber called Mod Vegan, who read the same book I read, and we collaborated doing a book review discussion video. So I think it's still an excellent video on this channel. Okay? So I've given you the answer to the question, and now I'm going to tell you what the question is. People write into me from time to time, sometimes asking in a really friendly way, how can they join the discussion here? How can they debate something with me? How can they collaborate with me? They're unlikely to use the word collaborate, but they want to have some kind of intellectual discussion with me on or off this channel, whether it's by email or by Skype or whatever it is they have in mind. How can they do that? And you know what? Sometimes people write in with a little bit more hostility, with a little bit more of a challenge, where they say they want to criticize my views or what have you, and they say, what is the way to do that? And the answer is, read the same book I read. Make your own video. State your own views. State your own interpretations. And I will respect you, even if I completely, utterly disagree with your opinion, because I will have a basis for respecting you in the fact that you did the same work that I did. You read the same source, and you brought your own perspective to bear on it, okay? I mentioned that question of interpreting Aristotle. I think the other guy is 100% wrong. But I also think he took the time to do the reading and even to explain to me what his interpretation of the reading was, and that I can respect, even when I may, in some sense, disrespect him or disrespect his opinion or what have you, okay? The various people who have wanted to, quote, debate, unquote, Marxism with me. Do you remember even one of them reading a single page of Karl Marx that I read, a single chapter of that book? Can you remember anyone who responded to my book review of Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky? Still a great video. I'll give you the link in the description of this video. I did a book review on that. The only response I got from anywhere on the political spectrum to my numerous forays into discussing politics is people trying to prove their moral superiority over me. People trying to express their dismissive contempt towards me, and never once taking the time to go to the source, to read the book themselves, to offer their own review, to offer their own perspective. And, you know, there are 2 different things here. 1, I may be wrong. 2, even if I'm not wrong, I may really benefit from hearing someone else's perspective. Imagine if someone else did the active research and offered their own opinion on Aristotle, Plato, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, on any one of these topics. That might make my life better. It might make your life more meaningful. It does something for the audience and for the people doing the reading. You know, we can kind of collaborate in our own education and challenge one another's assumptions, even if it just is that you read the same book I read, and there was something else in that book that you felt was really important that I felt was trivial and overlooked. Like in my critique of the book, I maybe emphasized one element, you found another. There are ways in which, we maybe can find some value, some educational value in the conflict, in the clash, in the exchange of opinions. But it has to begin with active research. Okay? So let me just say, there is one extraordinary critic of this channel. There is one extraordinary critic who was kicked out of my Discord forum after many years of my warmly inviting him to share his opinions. He appeared on the channel. I invited him to do Skype calls with me. I invited him to express his opinions. I promoted his channel. He has his own YouTube channel. For years, we had positive and friendly relations, and then this deteriorated into his bitterly hating me because he feels that his perspective on Xinjiang, China, is morally superior to my own. I am not interested in any debate concerning who has the moral high ground. Nothing could interest me less than being morally superior to a member of my audience, except perhaps hearing a member of my audience express to me how morally superior they feel they are to me. This is of no educational value. And it's tragic that right now a great deal of politics revolves around this kind of posturing, right? I have one book right here, and there are two more books coming in the mail on the history of Xinjiang and Central Asia, and the relationship between China and Central Asia, 1864 to present. If you want to challenge my view on the history and politics of Xinjiang, you've got to do the research. If you do the research and you're wrong, you'll be delighted to discover you're wrong. You'll think, well, how delightful. There's a whole lot here I didn't know. There's a whole new perspective, maybe on the history of China, maybe on the history of India, maybe on the history of Iran, the history of Russia, and Central Asia involves all these things. Wow, there were a lot of things I was wrong about, and by studying this chapter of history, I've really challenged my own assumptions. I've learned something new. When you do the research and you're wrong, you get to be delighted to discover that you're wrong. And if you do the research and you're right, then that will only, deepen your awareness of how important it is to be right about something on the basis of real empirical knowledge and not just on a smug sense of moral superiority over others who disagree with you. Okay, guys? So in the past, if you've been watching the channel for many, many years, I used to make a big effort to inform my audience and inform my Patreon subscribers about what I was currently reading, what I was currently working on in my limited time, whether that were ancient Greek or Chinese or books on politics and history in English. And I really made a big effort to try to invite people to collaborate positively, whether through Skype conversations. And I gave up. I failed. Or we could turn around and say, my audience let me down sometimes. But recently, a few people have asked me, how can they cross swords with me? All right? And this is my answer. Whether your motivation is that you want to be my friend, you want to be my colleague, or in some sense, maybe you want to be my enemy, that's fine too. Here on YouTube, I could use more meaningful conflict with other people who are doing research, whether about philosophy, politics, history, languages. I would be delighted to have a meaningful contrast of opinion with someone who despises me, all right? But we're not going to debate your moral superiority over me. That is of absolutely no substance and absolutely no interest. We have to have a discourse about politics that begins from the facts, proceeds from the facts to the facts, and concludes with the facts. Anything else I see as merely an exercise in ego and self-indulgence. And let's face it, whether we're talking about far-off Xinjiang, China, or, Vietnam, to an extent that is frankly terrifying to me. What I see is white Western people with comfortable lives looking out at the history of the world to find symbols for their own frustrated ambitions. I see white Western middle-class people looking at the Syrian civil war for some kind of symbol of their own frustrated ideals to have an anarchist revolution. And they managed to find a bunch of Kurds, members of the Kurdish ethnic minority, who in some sense call themselves socialists or feminists or anarchists, while at the same time remaining devout Muslims. And they cling on to this as a symbol of their own aspirations. And as soon as you have that emotional attachment, I think there's then a great reluctance to learn truth from facts. Because the more you learn about, empirical reality on the ground, the more the human reality, with the dirt under the fingernails, warts and all, as we used to say in English, the more it ceases to be a symbol of an ideal, the more it becomes just another sad reflection of human nature in all its imperfections. All right? There is no anarchist utopia in Rojava, Syria. All right? The Kurds are no more a perfect emblem for anarchism than they are for socialism, than they are for Islam itself, frankly. They're a, genuinely pathetic nationalist independence movement who've now been losing a war for a remarkable number of years and who have been all too willing to work as agents for any foreign power and any foreign intelligence agency that was willing to support them in their war against the government of Syria, the government of Turkey, so on and so forth. It's a truly tragic and pathetic tale. And you know what? The people of Vietnam were no more a symbol of anti-Americanism or anti-imperialism or of a better alternative to capitalism. The people of Vietnam had their own tragic historical struggle, first against the French and then against the Americans, that, in case you haven't heard, failed to produce a utopia after the American army packed up and went home. All right? I said on this YouTube channel many years ago that steel sharpens steel. If we can take the time to come on YouTube and really be honest with one another, really be real with one another, if we can share what it is we've read, what it is we're researching, what it is we care about, and if we can share our doubts as well, then, we're all going to be made sharper by this interchange, like steel sharpening steel. I really had the hope that YouTube could be the sort of meeting of the minds that I find Western academic colloquia always fail to be. Because, nobody here is trying to flatter the professor. Nobody's trying to line up research funding. There aren't these other factors militating against real honesty. And, it's not the case that the author of this book is going to be supervising my PhD thesis, so I have to flatter him. If I'm unimpressed with this book about the history of Xinjiang and China, I can come here and say to you, well, I started reading this, and this really let me down. If I have no agenda to flatter Polybius, an ancient author, let alone a living author, right? And by the way, a brief digression. I had a professor here in University of Victoria, and I paid quite a lot of money for his book. It was then a new publication. And when I told him, as politely as possible, this book is really not very impressive, I could repeat exactly what I said, but I said very politely that the book was a disappointment. He was devastated. He got angry. He got upset, and he never spoke to me again. He's never even replied to an email since then. And to me, that's very, very alien, but it's completely endemic to the hothouse of Western academia. Like, why did you publish this book if you didn't want anyone to dare to criticize it. You could have locked it in a desk drawer or said it should only be published after you're deceased. You published this book. It's a book about politics. You know what? And other experts and other interested people in the field are going to read it and going to find fault with it. And your book criticizes other people for their political views too. So why should you be above reproach? Why should you not be criticized? All right. There was a time when I thought, wow, what we've invented here on YouTube with the ability to pause and the ability to edit. And, like if you embarrass yourself, you can just hit delete and record a second version of the same monologue. There are all these advantages over standing and presenting a paper at a conference in an academic context. And hey, you want to talk about an anarchist ideal? How about the total lack of any authoritarian structure here, right? When people present their views in an academic context, they fear the authority of their professor. They fear, hey, this guy can give me a B- if I don't repeat exactly his opinions about politics, if I challenge him, or if I say his book was poorly written or was disappointing. In theory, it could end your academic career, but it could at least damage you and so on. It's amazing how the authority of the academic hierarchy manages to pervert and silence kind of every possible discussion of politics on a university campus. All right? I had hope that YouTube could be, for you and me, for us, for my generation, a new kind of colloquium where we could share our reading, share our research, share our real emotions, share our real experiences, and also share our doubts. Because the one thing I resented most about being in formal academic presentations, conferences, and colloquia was that everyone was terrified to say those three words, I don't know. And all research worth doing in the beginning and middle and end is guided by what we call research questions. To have a real research question, you've got to have the honesty to say to yourself and say to others, I don't know. This remains unknown. I'm trying to take something unknown and try. And you couldn't even get people to admit they hadn't read a book when they hadn't read a book. You have a whole situation, graduate students fronting on knowing things they don't know and having read books they haven't read, people pretending they've been places they haven't been, people pretending they speak languages they don't speak, endemic to academia, all right? I used to believe that YouTube could really be something better for you and me here and now with a cost of tuition that is $0. And it can be. The only thing lacking is you. All right? You and you and you have to step up. All right? You don't get any reward for reading Polybius. All right? You don't get any reward for reading Cicero. You don't get any reward for reading Aristotle, except you get to wake up in the morning and be that person you aspired to be. That you made the decision to stop playing video games, hit the books, and take responsibility to do active research so you can have an informed opinion. That you decided, you know what? I'm tired of basing my opinions on what they say on Fox News or what it says in the Guardian newspaper or the knee-jerk reaction of the left wing attacking Fox News or the knee-jerk reaction of the right wing attacking the Guardian. I actually decided to learn truth from facts so I can become the kind of person whose opinions are really substantive and nuanced based on empirical experience and research. Okay? That's what you get. You know what? You can do it alone. Or you can do it with me right here on YouTube through this wonderful 21st century parasocial experience. At your own pace, at your own time, you can hit pause, you can hit rewind, you can hit delete, and you can record it all over again. You get to be your own editor. All right? If you go and attend conferences in person, you don't. And as I said, in more than 5 years, only one person ever read a book in response to my invitation to participate in what it is I'm trying to do here, intellectually and politically. There's an open spot on the list for person number 2. It could be you.